Welcome to this episode of Lifts, and it's a very exciting episode. I'm really pleased to have these guys on. One, I don't think we've ever done a foursome on Lifts, and secondly, these are my sort of New York friends. I don't have too many friends in New York, but these are the guys that when you go out to meet them, you go to the top restaurants and the top bars. Like they're just the coolest people I know. I think that's the reason why we managed to actually get hooked up. I don't think there was much business that was actually going on, but they certainly pick a great spot to take me out whenever I'm in New York. But I'll hand over to you, Mo, to do more of an official intro.
Matthew, I just want to say that I appreciate that we still hold that, because I know that I haven't been able to forgive myself for that time I made you wait in West Hollywood for me for 90 minutes.
I'll forgive you for that one.
Yeah, well, a couple of things. One, if that were me, Matthew would have just left. He wouldn't even have waited long. So that shows the kind of respect he has for you, because he would be like, Mo, you're 5 minutes late, I'm out of here. That might have actually happened before. I'm just taking this Uber by myself. You can catch your own. But I feel even lower down the totem pole, Matthew, because now not only have Justin and Austin, who I've known as well, but I've taken you out. You're working on a cool project together that apparently everyone else in our circle knows about. And I just am finding out in the pre-show here as we're prepping up with this. So
That's cool.
something is missing here, but both guys, excited to have you on. For those in our audience, I'm going to do a quick intro of our two amazing guests. We have Austin Cohen and Justin Turetsky. Austin is the CEO and founder of FlexIt. Justin is the COO and part of the founding team. FlexIt is a multifaceted business. They have live two-way communication. I've had an opportunity to get to know it over the last few years. They provide digital content. I mean, they are a very strong technology platform, and also have delved into some newer ventures as well, which we'll get into here shortly. But I'm really glad to have you both on. One thing I'll mention too, we just found out we have a connection with the Hamptons, Justin. So we'll be hanging out a little bit this summer, and hopefully form our own special bond.
I don't go out east very much. It's all Austin.
If you give him that label, then he's going to be torn between his. Sometimes, half the time you meet Justin, since he's from South Jersey, he says he's a Philly sports fan. The other half the time, he says he's a New York sports fan.
Yeah, but I always just say wherever I get invited to go watch the game, the better the ticket. Then I'm a fan of whatever team you bring me to.
So if he's a Hamptons guy,
so I've got one for both of you. So Austin, we'll hang out in the Hamptons, and Justin, I'm a Jets season ticket holder. We'll go to some games together this season.
Hopefully hopefully you don't have a PSL anymore.
I do. I still do. You can't give it up, because I got it in 2009, and if you stop buying the season tickets, I now live in DC, but I used to live in Jersey, and if you stop buying the season tickets, you also lose the PSL. You don't get that back, and they get to resell it. So I paid for the PSL the one time, but if I have to continue to buy my 4 tickets every year, even though I don't go to all the games anymore.
This is our year, though. This is our year.
Yeah. This is our year. Are you a Jets fan as well?
I'm a Jets fan too.
Okay, now we all have a reason to go.
Disgruntled PSL holder.
Okay, we'll compare sections next time. I would love it. I love it. All right, Matthew.
We'll get into business then. I think the first thing, knowing you guys are based in New York City, and we've had conversations about some of the interesting stuff that's going on. I thought a good place to start is as of middle of 2024. What's happening in New York City in the fitness space, and I probably fitness is a narrow description, but in the broader fitness, health, and wellness space, and what sort of interesting things are you seeing that may people who are not from New York have not yet heard of?
Well, New York's busier than ever before. The activity on the streets is insane and amazing. Rents are sky high, so the place is buzzing, and it's really encouraging for our industry to see the amount of new activity, and that's across fitness side, the recovery side, the nutrition side. It's spanning the spectrum of the industry. And when we think about some of the last couple of years, we go back 4 years, 3 years ago, some of the polar ends of the spectrum where people were saying that brick and mortars and studios were going away and things like that. It's amazing to see new concepts popping up all over the place. I think it's especially interesting to see heightened personalization, reaching into health. You're starting to see, whether it's Lifetime get into health, Equinox just announced their longevity plan, seeing recovery boxes, which are popping up. I think every other store on 20th Street between 5th and 6th is a recovery box now in Flatiron in New York City. So the activity is really wild, and it's a good thing. It's exciting, and people are raving about all the new access points that they have here in the city.
Yeah, and the traditional gym space is continually evolving. We're seeing that some gyms are more used as a third space where there's ability to lounge or get spa treatments. There's new lifetime clubs that open up that have extensive spas. I mean, Equinox has been here a long time, but they continue to expand into other services. And then we're seeing physical therapy centers that are function more like a gym in some cases. We're seeing membership clubs and social membership clubs that have gyms in them. So we're seeing gyms in residential buildings. We're seeing gyms in office buildings. We're seeing gyms in membership clubs. We're really seeing fitness pop up all over. And then the convergence with recovery, spa, and beauty services, and seeing more and more places that have overlap across multiple of these experiences or services.
What are you seeing in terms of the direction of the market now? Obviously, being in New York City, you mentioned the rents are going up. It's not really a cheap place to run any kind of business model. Are you seeing more of a move to premium and ultra premium in anything, or are you still seeing the different price points at different levels? And I say that because there was there's a project called Continuum, which I think is around about $10,000 a month. There's the Equinox premium membership as well that they've recently just launched. So as an outsider, it would seem that there seems to be more offerings that weren't around before for people that are prepared to pay an extremely high price point.
So I think there's actually nuance to it. The high price point from the new Equinox offering and the price tag on Continuum, I think are outliers. What I think we're starting to see a lot of is premium offerings at higher price points. So if you think about Continuum, that's, call it $10,000 a month is the sticker price that's getting marketed. You're not seeing tons of that. If you think about other membership access points in New York, Resorts is one of those that's pricing their experience at that Continuum tag. But really, where the bulk of the market is trending is to a more expensive offering, but that has an outsized premium nature in its experience. So it's more experiential. The offering is moving up the chain, but the price point is still palatable for New York, if you will. What I mean by that is if you annualize a membership to Equinox or Lifetime, which on a monthly basis now, the rates are pretty high, right? Let's just go with the number 300. If you look at a Soho House membership, you're looking at a few $1,000s a year for some of these member, if you will, experiences. And where we're seeing things start to trend is now in the 5, 7 a year, 10 a year. So not the 10 a month, but we're seeing elevated experiences at higher price points. Therabody's Reset, $7,000 a year if you want the higher end offering from there. So we're seeing the market itself start to elevate, and we're seeing an increased allocation of premium experiences, but we're definitely not seeing a resurgence of exorbitantly priced access points.
So is this more related to the consumer coming out of the pandemic, clearly got more educated on their own wellness, whether it is through wearables or just workouts or just understanding the importance of what they eat, the impact it's going to have on their body. So now they're willing to say, I understand the impact of my behavior, my actions, my activity. So I want to live a better quality of life, such as that I will go and invest a bigger share of my wallet into wellness. Is that where you're seeing consumers, one, tolerating the price increases? Because in both cases, you mentioned Equinox and Lifetime, they raised their prices with very little churn as a result. So most consumers just accepted it. You're seeing additional offerings, like you mentioned, talked about. People are willing to spend, let's just say, anywhere from $300 to $500 a month on the membership part, let alone other things like supplements and other services that they might do. Or do you think it is an outlier being in New York, maybe LA? There's just a few pockets of this kind of markets around the country that could accept these types of prices or investment into wellness?
Well, let's answer it backwards. Let's work on it together. So Planet Fitness, other side of the spectrum that we've been talking about, just announced a price increase, right?
To $15.
Do you think there's going to be a lot of pushback? That's the first, correct me if I'm wrong, first price increase Planet's ever undertaken.
In 26 years? No, I don't think there'll be a lot of pushback.
So I think what we're seeing is across the board that there's a higher willingness to pay for increased levels of personalization. People have a higher willingness to pay as compared to their discretionary income for prioritization of their health. I think people are looking for outlets for the fitness, for the recovery, for the nutrition. And I think that that trend is all the more heightened in New York and in LA. So it's not to say that what's happening in New York and LA is happening everywhere else. It's just happened. The trend is upholding, and then the magnitude is larger. I think the other thing that's interesting to point out is the ways that the trends flow from New York to LA or vice versa is different. If you talk about what's really trendy right now in LA, it's a little bit different than what's really trendy here in New York. Right? If you dig into healthy foods, the foods that are super healthy and that are trendy in Los Angeles, it's different than what people are receiving here.
Yeah, and then what's going to have staying power and become an experience that lasts beyond the hype cycle. I think there's like a celery cleanse trend right now, and Erewhon water that people are obsessed with. Like, there's things that get little moments, but like what's going to stick around is something like a cold plunge, which has been around for hundreds, if not thousands of years. People swimming in cold water.
That's coming from a guy who's a big cold plunge guy.
Call me a plungino.
Biased.
Yeah,
Very
really
biased
like
people.
I didn't do it today.
There was Air ice cubes I saw for like what were they, like $50? I saw that on social media, like, so like ice cubes.
There's things like that.
There's a reason Erewhon, I mean, it will soon, but hasn't opened yet in New York, right?
Really?
They haven't even opened in Orange County yet.
Yeah.
Like,
so this is ice cubes again.
This is another one that you're out of the. Sorry, we cut you out of this one as well, mate.
The wait is over. Our new Escape Fitness catalog has landed. This is the essential guide to all of the latest product innovations that are shaping the future of functional training. Bigger and better than ever, this year's catalog is 190 pages, jam-packed with everything from eye-catching, bespoke functional training frames to some of the latest strength training equipment. So sign up today to receive the digital version today. So what are you waiting for? Go to escapefitness.com now.
Well, you say
that's the problem with having 4 people on.
But our point is that there's a trend, and then there's things that have staying power, and there's things that don't. And I don't think we'll be talking about Erewhon ice cubes in 20 years, but I think there'll still be plenty of cold plunges. The same way that there's saunas in every hotel and every gym now, but that was a moment that saunas, hot saunas came to popularity in the U.S. and they started building them into health clubs. Cold plunge is going to be another thing that everyone has to have.
So, I've got to pick up on the article actually, because we're actually here to talk about a few articles that was kind of the original brief for the podcast, and I think we got carried away talking about New Jersey and
all the things that I'm not a part of.
That was great.
And all the things that most not a part of. But let's move to the article.
So let's move to the article, and that was a very nice transition there. But one of the things that was quite interesting, specifically related to food and health food, is the gene edited salad, which apparently is coming to the US stores. And the bit that was quite interesting on this story to me was that Bayer, I always saw Bayer as a pharmaceutical company. Apparently they acquired Monsanto, that was, I guess, some, kind of a big player in the what is it, like a farming seed space or something like that.
Yeah,
but they've actually
pesticides.
All I sort of know about them is a lot of bad press in terms of a lot of the specific seeds that they were creating. But apparently they've come up with this genetically modified salad, and I suppose salads have this sort of strange bitter taste, and they're making the salads taste nicer, but in a healthy way, keeping a lot of the nutrition apparently. So, what do we think this is going? Is it, in some ways I can see the interest of getting into the health food space and for people to eat healthy, but it almost seems like the opposite as well, where we're kind of modifying a lot of things that are supposed to be in a particular way for a genuine reason. What are your thoughts about this?
Look, I think one, as we talked about earlier, right, there's always spectrums and opposite ends. We talked about Equinox and Planet Fitness. I look at food the same way. I've been on a food journey, since I was 13 years old. And if you look at even the two spectrums today, you've got a big push towards carnivore, back to red meat, back to whole milk, right from the cow, unpasteurized milk, all these things, right? And then on the other hand, you've got a big push towards fake meats, like Beyond Meats has just come up with another big push. They must have gotten more funding. Things like this coming out. I think the truth is that genetically engineered foods have been around for decades. I mean, our oranges, our strawberries, our meats, our chickens have all been modified in some way. And it's, in fact, even what is organic is a spec, right? I mean, even organic food has modified in some way. So I don't really know what to make of this. I'd love to get Austin's and Justin's thoughts. But to me, it's like, okay, you're going to make it a little bit less bitter, but they've been modifying grapes and fruits and salads and meats for decades now. I don't know why this might be any more different, but Austin and Justin would love to get your thoughts.
Sure. Well, to speak to some of the trends, I mean, maybe we operate in a little bit of a bubble, but that seems to be going very strong right now among the health and wellness community and leaders in our space, or people that are looking for organic and grass-fed beef and other carefully sourced single origin from a farm or a location or a place that's a single place versus creating something that's a hodgepodge from products from all over the world. People focus on seasonality and things that are local and high quality. When it comes to genetically modified, I mean, right now that you see a lot of on labels organic, and then you see non-GMO. I think that's mandated in the EU and the UK. And like you said, Mo, that the fruits and foods that we eat are not natural in the sense that they came out of the ground and this is how they taste. There's a term. I spent a summer in Guatemala and I saw avocado trees in the wild. And I saw one that fell. And I said, holy cow, I'm going to bring this avocado home and I'm going to eat it. And I took the avocado home. I waited for it to ripen. It never really got soft. And then I cut into it and it tasted like an apple. It was like dry and really inedible. And then I asked some of the locals, so like, you don't eat those kinds of avocados. You can. But then I looked it up. Well, why are the avocados from Mexico, as they say, why are those so good and creamy and smooth and the right amount of time, 3 days at home and then they get ripe and, the nutrition, all that stuff? It's because they're cultivars. And a cultivar is a term that's not necessarily genetically modified in a lab, but things that are selectively bred. And that has gone across every single thing that you're eating over hundreds, if not thousands of years, going back to natives, even in North America, selectively breeding corn and selectively breeding beans and coffee and berries and all of that stuff. So I think when you're blatant in putting a seed in a lab and removing or adding genetics, I think that's a little bit spooky for people. And I think the jury's out of how genetically modifying things will affect us in the long term. But selective breeding, I mean, between dogs, humans, and food, I mean, it's very, very common. You take, hey, this is a sweet strawberry, this is a sweet strawberry, let's make them have more sweet strawberries. Or these are bigger, these are sweeter, let's try to find the baby of these strawberries that's big and sweet, right? And I think that kind of selective breeding, I mean, that's just a part of farming. But I think this kind of blatant, like trying to remove the bitterness factor, no offense to who wrote this, I don't think this is a big headline or really news. I think mustard greens are not that great anyway. I prefer kale or spinach or maybe arugula, or as they say in the UK, rocket, right, Matthew? So that's just my quick take on it. I don't know if I was going to have.
But you didn't know what you were getting with Justin on the podcast today. I like to say he knows something about everything, but everything about nothing.
That's right.
And, your audience just got.
Well, I think we just found out.
Well,
I found out two things. He loves salad. He knows a lot about salads, and he loves cold plunges.
Love that. I like the cold plunge and eat a salad.
It doesn't make sense. There's no salads and no cold plunges in Amagansett, right, Mo? I don't know
You
if
did
he's.
it. You
he
did
may
impress
struggle.
me that you started to go into a trip to Guatemala, and it would, perfectly linked into the article that we kind of sent you 2 minutes before this. So I have to say, I was, one of the most prepared answers for any question I think we've asked there. So 10 out of 10 for that, Justin.
Cheers.
I'm also curious though, right? Looking at the whole wellness scene growing in New York, I'd love to get your perspective on this. I'm in DC, which also has a wellness scene of its own. But people are getting more educated on the fact that fake meat is actually worse for you than the real meat. I'm saying this as an opinion, but I think the amount of ingredients and effort that goes into fake. If you want to be vegan and not eat meat, then be vegan and not eat meat. But looking at brands like Beyond Meat versus eating a healthy grass-fed burger, single sourced, as you mentioned, is really better for you. How is the scene in New York adapting to that? Are they adapting to it as consumers are getting more educated?
Okay, I said the food category, so I don't want to overshadow because there's a lot to say on other categories. But for the food category, vegan and vegetarian restaurants, they don't work. There's been some people that have tried it, they don't work. Vegetarianism, nothing, I guess, against that. I think that's an okay way of living, and I think it probably does reduce your chances of getting, well, the science shows reduce your chances of getting heart disease, but it doesn't necessarily make you healthier because you're going to be very mineral deficient. And sometimes people are going to kill me for saying that, but it's true. I think you can get all the nutrition of a salad in a grass-fed burger, and it can taste really delicious and be better for the environment if it's locally sourced. For the Beyond Burgers and all that stuff, I mean, we saw every single menu that pop up in New York for a little while. And they made a big push when they got funding. That's starting to go away. I think they now have it kind of as an additional offering. But I think even vegetarians are getting smarter and saying that's not real food. That's made in a lab. If you actually look at the ingredients that are included on it, I mean, there's just all kinds of different, there's like 40 ingredients. Or grass-fed beef that has one ingredient, grass-fed beef. And it has naturally occurring fat, and it's healthy and well-balanced and full of minerals and iron and B vitamins and all of that. It's like having a multivitamin. And when you're having something like Beyond Meat, I think that there's been a big push against that. Some restaurants have it. It's really served, but I think that the more growth area of health trend is more of these naturally sourced, healthier for you options that are made carefully. People are very against seed oils right now. That's a big push. And actually the Beyond products and the other brands, they have processed oils that are made into that as well. So, I think that the world's starting to, at least in New York, they're starting to push back against some of those fake meats and meat alternatives. There's going to be a market for it, but I don't think that they're having that hype. I think it's kind of settled in a little bit.
I think that you can pretty much pick anything apart, right? And in excess, that's going to be unhealthy for you, right? A lot of talk about microplastics lately. I think that, with moderation, if you think about New York City, generally people are placing more emphasis, as we talked about a few moments ago, on their health and nutrition. But you got a lot of unhealthy restaurants with a lot of people dining out for a lot of meals and drinking regularly in New York. And I think in many ways, that's just how New York City's like currently set up. So notwithstanding menu construction and better ingredients and all those things, think about it. Most restaurants in Manhattan are filled most nights of the week. That's a lot of eating out that people are doing, right? So naturally, compared to, Matthew, where you are, where it's a little bit more suburban, it's going to be a lot harder, even if you have really well-sourced menu items to keep a more balanced nutritional lifestyle. And some of that, I think, is like a very difficult paradigm to shift just because of how New York City's set up.
Well, so much of behavior and optionality is has been lately driven by influencer marketing and social media, right? Young people in their teens and 20s, even 30s, maybe even 40s, looking at what is this aspirational person that I'm looking at on Instagram or TikTok, where are they eating out at, what foods are they eating, what workouts are they doing. So much of the world that we're in is shaped by influencer marketing. We have this article that I think, Matthew, you had sent over to me last week, kind of talking about the de-influencing era of Gen Z, and that Gen Zs are becoming more skeptical of influencers and sustainability messaging. And I'm just curious, kind of going back to New York, where I always feel like New York and LA are typically ahead of the rest of the country here. How are you seeing marketing evolve and change in this post-pandemic, AI-driven, social media era where TikTok is here today, TikTok might not be here in a month. Like, how are you seeing brands reach consumers? How are consumers reaching brands? And then how is that evolving?
Well, I think the thing that stood out to me the most in the quick 90-second take that I had when you guys sent this over before the pod is that things aren't really binary. So, is it the end of influencer marketing as an era, as the article somewhat assumes? I don't really think so. Is influencer marketing changing? Are the dynamics of social media marketing different now than they were in 2017? I was talking to a boutique fitness studio owner about 4 or 5 hours ago who grew a really large boutique fitness brand, and they were ahead of the curve. They started marketing on social media, more so Instagram than Google, and before Barry's did, before SoulCycle did. They were really able to take advantage of that. I think most companies in our space have found the dilution at this point in marketing using social media, specifically Facebook and Instagram. So does that mean, does it mean that, are we now at a point where influencer marketing doesn't work? Are we at a point now where brand loyalty is so strong, it's hard to get consumers to shift, and that influencer marketing works, but there's so much dilution that the strategies that have to be employed are different? I think that's more of the nature. I think we're well past the phase of the whitelisting that we were seeing in 2020 and 2021, right? That doesn't work anymore. But are there people who have really, really engaged audiences who can get those audience to buy what they're pushing? For sure. But I think it's brand by brand and market by market, and that the dynamics are changing, and the amount of competition that's out there between brands within categories is large and good and healthy because these categories are growing. The strategies that brands have to employ to see success now are a little bit different than they were back in 2018 and 2020.
Right, because you could go out with an influencer that has 5-10 million followers, and you could get literally 0 customers out of that, depending on how it works with the algorithm and if the ad is not very natural.
Or the same thing if two big companies co-market to one another's email lists and they just try to sell one another's products. That's not going to work either.
I think the best influencer you could have is your doctor or your friends that you trust. So I think if Matthew told me about a product that he loves and I was in the market for that product, I'd be very, very high chance that I'd be interested in buying that product. For example, a friend of mine asked me what whey protein I recommend, and I could do a whole pod with you guys on whey protein.
No, don't let him go there.
I know I said it's most bioavailable, but yeah, I sent it to a guy, he bought it, right? But if I did an influencer thing to 1 million people, I'd give off another ad. So I think the key word is authenticity, and I think that the next generation wants to see authentic support or love of products. I think when we see celebrities actually use something because they love it, or say this isn't an ad, I'm actually just using this because I love it, or my kids use this, or or going to a certain restaurant that's very authentic because they like it, that has a very powerful influence when it's authentic. But like Austin said, this is like, hi, hashtag ad, like buy this new thing. It's a great brand. It's so awesome. And I'm an ambassador. People roll their eyes at that now. I think its authenticity is the way. And it's hard to have really authentic ambassadors unless they really love the product. You better have a great product, and that's how you can grow your base.
It's interesting. There's a couple of people I've been listening to recently, and I kind of fell out of their content and got back into it. One was Gary V, and the second one, Hormozi, and they both talked about organic as opposed to paid. And the second one was about, there was a few examples Hormozi gave with people with really, really small audiences, like, probably a few thousand, getting 20 or 30 likes, and how they'd built, like this particular girl had built a business that was generating net $1 million a year, and really, really small business, very, very, really, really niche product. But she was just kind of, using social media to really engage, very, very specific content. And I think it was kind of goes out to what you said, that, if you want a restaurant in New York, then I'd probably come and speak to you guys and get a personal recommendation and a background on it, as opposed to going to an influencer. And I guess if you can create those micro communities, and I suppose the fitness industry having, a lot of these local opportunities to do that, could, I suppose, evolve how they do their conversations with people, and probably change the approach to social media. Because I definitely get the feeling that whole space has evolved quite a lot. And I think a lot of the things that people follow are things that worked probably a couple of years ago, but now it seems to be a very, very different space. And I think, as you said, Austin, maybe, influence are not falling out of favor, but some of the tactics that you deploy to make those to make that type of marketing work may have to evolve.
Well, I think we are almost at time. Matthew, this technically is not our first foursome. We had a couple others before already.
Right, okay.
Yeah, but this is the first one we had, like both of them in one window, but in two windows. But
I think it was 4 men, actually. That was it. It was, we've had,
yes, that is the first. That is the first. That is the first. Well, Austin and Justin, it's been a joy to have you on. We typically like to wrap up with a final thought on the episode. So one question that I'm going to pose to each of you, and then Matthew, I will hand it off to you, to say, given the market kind of in New York, we could even put LA in there. If you were to give a piece of advice for an entrepreneur that is looking to either innovate or start a business in our category, what would that be?
Oh, now we're stumped.
I'm trying who's going first. You want to go first or me?
I think for me, it comes down to two things. I think this is a great time. Personalization across whatever you might be looking to do is something that will be heightened, that we haven't remotely gotten close to the peak of the hype cycle for. We've started to see leveraging of data and wearables and things, helping people to feel smarter and more engaged with how they're doing and functioning. But I think implementing practices that heighten personalization in anything you might be doing in the categories, one. And then two would be, I would encourage people to not feel staved off by perceived competition in any of the categories that they might be going into, whether it's boutique fitness, if it's recovery space, whatever those spaces might be. I actually think we're doing a lot of conditioning of consumers to be more embracing of a lot of the experiences that have started to pop up with increasing popularity. So personalization, and then just really going for it, not being scared off by perceived competition.
Yeah. All right. I mean, I don't have much else to add to that. I thought what you were going with the question at the beginning was just general advice for entrepreneurs. I mean, I think the general advice that I would give to entrepreneurs is that if you still want to do your idea after everybody tells you not to do it, then if you can't make it through just telling your friends and family what you're going to do, and you feel discouraged, that means you're going to quit down the road. So I think you should see if everybody tells you don't do it, it's a terrible idea, you're an idiot, don't quit your job. And if after all of that you still want to do it, maybe even more so, then I would recommend you might consider being an entrepreneur, but otherwise don't. And then for the health and wellness side, I mean, I think you could always err on doing something. I think this is a quote from Heinz of Heinz Ketchup. He said, do something uncommonly well, something like that. I'm butchering it. But, if you take something in the space that you love to do and do it really, really well, and you can be a great operator and execute, then that de-risks your chances of being successful at something. If you just do it really well, and we already know that there's customers out there for that, and just be great at executing, you have more control over your ability to be an entrepreneur. If you go with something crazy, some AI headset where you skydive out of a window, like that's not going to work. Just assume it's not going to work. You don't have product market fit. So I always recommend for first-time entrepreneurs, try to stay closer to things that have already worked.
And Justin snuck in his entrepreneurial advice. So I'll leave you with a one-liner, which is that for all entrepreneurs and aspiring entrepreneurs, I believe in business that no doesn't mean no, it just means not now. And I think that is essential to the core of being successful as an entrepreneur. So just not taking no's ever personally. But thank you to both of you for having us on today. This was a blast. And I don't know if you've ever had anybody back for a part two, but since we weren't the first foursome, we'd love to be the first part two.
Matthew, any final thoughts for you?
Yeah, that was one of my final thoughts, actually. I think we should do kind of like, we should set up a couple of times in the year to do a sort of New York special, but we should do it in one of your great locations. And maybe we can bring Scott over and we'll do a couple of these a few times a year. So I think that was one of my thoughts. And second one, just on Justin's comments, I think, doing something well, there's tons of product ideas. And I think, just going into the market and trying to create the best. And I know you are working on a project that you can't share at the moment, but my experience with working with you guys and a lot of the initiatives that we've spoken about over the years is you have a standard for excellence. And I think whatever it is, even if it's an affordable version of a product, just being the best in the category is something that's not easy to achieve, and it's easy to sort of get forced into not doing that. But I think if you aim to be the best at whatever you do, I think certainly sets you on the way to success. Mo.
Well, I think, all of that is just fantastic advice. If I could only add, I would say, obviously, we're all entrepreneurs. Some of us have been entrepreneurs longer than others, but it's definitely a challenging road. It's not an easy journey. One thing that I've learned, has taken me over a decade to learn that being an entrepreneur, is pragmatism and humility. Be pragmatic around the concept that you have, and be humble and really, know what you don't know well, and surround yourself with some really good people that can help fill the gaps. But I appreciate having both of you on. I think I feel a little bit less left out now that we've completed an episode. I kind of feel like we've all bonded over this. So thank you all for that. Matthew, you can sign us off.
Yeah, thanks for listening to this week's episode of Lifts. If you've got any comments or questions about anything we've discussed, please go to the Lifts LinkedIn page. And if you did enjoy this episode, or you got any great ideas, then please do us a favor and share it with one or two people so we can get this out to more listeners. Thank you very much, and I hope you enjoyed the episode.